So James, we usually are analysing some pretty dire situations, especially what's going on in the Middle East, notably in Palestine at the moment. However, it is nice to sometimes bring a little bit of comedic relief, should we say, into these topics.
It is, mate.
And Bibi, Netanyahu, has just pulled a sickie, has he?
He has indeed pulled possibly one of the greatest sickies of all time. For our audience that may not know, it's an Australian phrase. Pulling a sickie or chucking a sickie, throwing a sickie. It's essentially what you would do if you woke up one day and just decided you really couldn't be fucked going into work. Part of my language, you ring up the boss and just say, look, man, I ate some dodgy sushi or something like that, upset tummy, I can't come into work. This move has been pulled by Benjamin Netanyahu, the leader of a country pulling a sickie. This is absolutely wild.
So he didn't turn up to Parliament for work?
No, so what happened is his corruption trial against him, he was scheduled to appear in court on a certain day, but he reportedly had to postpone it until September because he had an upset tummy. Poor bloke. Look, I'm not going to, which apparently it left him bedridden. I'm not going to lie.
Is that because he couldn't stomach the war going on in Gaza?
Ooh, that was very good. That was very good. No, I think he does have an appetite for more war, to be completely honest. But look, the trial, this is ongoing. It's been going on since 2020. It's in regards to the claim that he and his wife allegedly accepted over $250,000 worth of luxury goods, cigars, jewellery from billionaires in exchange for political favours, as well as two other cases in which he allegedly attempted to negotiate favourable coverage of himself in the media. So but every time he's been scheduled to show up for court, he's just been like, we just bombed Lebanon. Sorry, national security. Yeah. Sorry, there's a situation in Gaza, national security. Now, look, well, I'm sure many of our people watching may have chucked a sickie in their time, maybe told a little white lie to get out of going to work. I don't think anyone has, bombed Lebanon as an excuse to get out of work. I might try that one on Monday with the boss. I'll see what he says. I reckon it'll work. If it works for Bibi, it can work for me. However, it really does add credence to the theory that this whole situation is being perpetuated by Benjamin Netanyahu just so he can continue his own career.
Stay out of prison.
Stay out of prison, exactly. So we call it pulling a sickie, and Bibi's taking it to a whole new level. However, that hasn't stopped him jetting off to the US. So he was actually in the US, I think, about a week prior to his sickie. I'm not sure if he maybe picked up a bug over there, perhaps. I'm sure the food in Israel is probably actually a lot better than the processed slop they get in the US. But he's pretty much just gone on his, it's almost fortnightly publicity tour to the US to gin up support from the US Congress. So Bibi and Israel, support for them are at record lows in the US. And
especially amongst young people.
Amongst young people and worldwide, funnily enough. It's almost as if, starving 2 million people to death is not a good look.
No, it's not good for your PR.
It's not good for your PR, but he is relentless in trying to build back that reputation. So he decided to sit down for an episode of the Full Send podcast.
This is with the Nelk Boys, isn't it?
This is hosted by popular YouTubers, the Nelk Boys. The content they produce, I would probably describe it as brain rot.
It's very much like US kind of lifestyle prank content.
Yeah, prank content, frat boy content.
Yeah. Driving expensive cars, hanging out with OnlyFans models.
Yeah, OnlyFans models. Hanging out with UFC fighters, selling cryptocurrency. Grifting, that's precisely it. However, look, shout out to these lads. They're very successful.
Yeah.
They've got 8.5 million views on YouTube. Not politically educated people, and I don't think they actually had the intellectual capacity to challenge Benjamin Netanyahu on anything substantial.
And they came out and said this afterwards, did they not?
Or they did come out afterwards and say, the interview was scripted.
Yeah.
But I think that's precisely why Bibi chose to go on this podcast, because he knew his handlers were like, dude, these guys are idiots.
Yeah.
Just go for it and you can talk shit. And Benjamin Netanyahu is a very good talker and a very smooth operator, I have to say. And if you had no idea of the political background and what was happening, I can find it. It'd be very easy to be enthralled.
Yeah.
He has a silver tongue, I do have to say.
My understanding is that I think 20 people from the Israeli and US government came to the White House to orchestrate this interview and handed, as you mentioned, a script to the Nelk boys to interview Netanyahu with.
And they are very kind of Trump adjacent. They've interviewed Trump before, so I think for them it's just, how cool is this, you know?
Maybe we could get a trip paid to go to Canberra to interview Netanyahu or something, James.
I'd do it.
That could be good.
I'd do it. Oh, he'd be an interesting man to pick his brains. Although, funnily enough, Geordie, I don't think we'd get accepted.
No.
I have a sneaking suspicion. So it turns out, you think, why the Nelk boys? Well, look, this is just a little bit of information that I dug up. Funnily enough, it turns out that the father of one Aaron Steinberg, who's one of the Nelk boys, he's that kind of flabby, soft kid. He's actually a lawyer and in the past had represented Asher Khani, an Israeli nuclear arms smuggler. So there is definitely an aspect of maybe something deeper involved. There's a few other possible links involved.
Yeah, definitely.
We can speculate on that.
Potentially to the Israeli state.
Yeah, absolutely. But this whole thing goes hand in hand with the new Zionist media strategy. So according to Haaretz, the Israeli Foreign Ministry is going to fund a tour of the country by a cadre of right-wing, pro-Trump, pro-MAGA influencers, all under the age of 30, in order to generate positive publicity. This is a quote from Yaakov Livneh, who's the Senior Deputy Director of the Israeli Foreign Ministry's Department of Public Diplomacy. With the rise of the America First movement and MAGA in American politics, it's essential for Israel that the movement adopt a pro-Israel position. So the Foreign Ministry plans to bring a total of 500 such influencers to Israel for similar trips by the end of the year. These will be carried out by a group called Israel 365, which aims to promote support for Israel amongst primarily US Christians, who, apart from the evangelical nutjob aspect of that political base, have become increasingly disillusioned by the actions of Israel, especially against Christian communities, in the West Bank and in Gaza, and the very blatant Israeli influence over US policy. So we've seen people like someone like a Candace Owens, for example.
And Tucker
Carlson, who are these kind of right-wing
Christian
nationalists. Yeah, you can call them what they are. I'd say Candace Owens kind of leans a bit less from anti-Zionism, maybe a bit closer to anti-Semitism, but she has been very outspoken and public about her criticism for Israel, as has Tucker Carlson as well.
They have, yes.
And I think this growing awareness is starting to fracture the MAGA base in the United States, which was the driving force behind Trump's re-election. Israel has realised this, and I think they're taking precautions to try and prevent it getting out of hand, because I think the sentiment shared by lots of these kind of American, like the kind of patriot MAGA crowd, is that, well, we love America. America might have made mistakes in the past. America still needs to go around the world. They're not necessarily saying America doesn't need to go and invade other countries and stuff, but they're saying it can't be dictated to us by a foreign government.
That's right. Like Israel has influence over our country.
Absolutely.
Do something about it.
And they do not even... so it's, again, a stupid kind of contradictory position, but that's their level of understanding. But that is affecting Israeli support in the US. Not that it matters to Congress at all, but for the voting base, it is a big deal. Anyways, back to the Nelk Boys interview. I do not want to I've watched a fair bit of it. I don't want to subject you, Geordie, or our audience to much of it.
Thanks for that.
No worries, man. It really will make you dumber. But here I have just a quick clip to play, so we can see the kind of intellectual acumen we're dealing with.
On the rocks of Middle Eastern realities, you can only build peace on truth and reality, not on deliberate, falsified fantasy.
Why do they say Israel's like starving the people of Gaza?
Well, because we're trying to get the food in, and we let food trucks in, and guess what happens when we let them in? Hamas steals the food, takes the good chunk for itself, then sells at inflated prices. They jack up the prices, and then they sell the food to its population, to its hungry population, if they give them at all. And then use the money that they take from their own people to recruit more killers into their terror machine. That's what happens.
Why are more Palestinians not siding with Israel against Hamas then?
Well, up to now they've been terrorized, but guess what's happened? Since we're beating Hamas, all of a sudden we see Palestinians rising. You have to see this to believe this, okay? And they say to Hamas, hey, you're not coming into my building. You know, you can't use my school or this hospital as your command post. We're not letting you. And they start fighting them. Now we have actually armed conflict between Palestinians and terrorists. It was unimaginable a year and a half ago. But now there are Palestinians who rise up. And, you know, the more the better, because we can create a different future for Gaza. And we should also do something very simple that President Trump said, and it was brilliant. So that's my idea. That's how he cuts to the chase. He says, you know, at the end of this war, the people of Gaza should have the choice. If they want to leave for other countries, they want a freedom of choice. Why are they locked in? Hell, we're not locking them in. Anybody could leave, but Hamas is locking them in. Suppose they want to leave. They want to go to another country, okay? Why shouldn't they have the freedom of choice to do that? Because this is all upside down, you know? The victim of this horrible terrorism is called the aggressor. The people who are oppressed by Hamas are seen as supporting Hamas. Give them a choice. Give them freedom. Give them a life and give them a future. They can't have that with these Hamas stormtroopers.
He is a smooth operator.
He is.
He knows how to warp facts and reality to suit his narrative.
He does, absolutely. And again, to the kind of uneducated, just to the people interviewing him, that's all I'm going to call them.
Yeah.
Again, that works absolutely perfectly for them.
And to their viewers, if you listen to that, it'd be hard to understand how what he's saying is completely incorrect.
Well, of course, but here's the thing, Geordie, is that the viewers of that channel did actually know he was full of shit, because it's been met with huge backlash. So the channel reportedly lost over 10,000 subs since the interview dropped, and it has a massive dislike to like ratio of 36,000 likes to 200,000 dislikes, and it's been viewed over 1.5 million times. So it's a lot of people have come out and said what, like, there's a huge kind of the YouTube commentary sphere has come out and said, what are you doing? You just softball this war criminal. And even the gentlemen of the Nelt Boys have come out and saying, there was a lot of backlash. One of the guys was reportedly saying, none of my Muslim friends are talking to me anymore. It was completely scripted by Bibi's team. And it's like, well, what do you expect, man? But look,
do you think they realised that they were just being used as propagandists?
I don't think those people have the capacity to actually understand what's happening. You know, it's a pretty simple concept, but I just don't think their brains operate in that world, in like the grifter world. But the entire interview is just like, it's essentially that. So he just justifies the actions of Israel. He reverses. He said everything is the fault of Hamas. He stresses the danger of Iran, obviously, as well. He stresses the importance of Israel being, kind of implying that, we're doing this so you guys in America are safe, rah, rah, rah.
And he also whitewashes ethnic cleansing. And turns into this, we're giving them a freedom of choice to leave the country.
So they can leave the Gaza Strip if they want.
We'll make the conditions so bad that they're forced into leaving. And then, but see, we're giving you the freedom to go elsewhere.
You're escaping this horrible regime of Hamas. He stresses the importance of Israel as a liberal, free society in the Middle East. He busts out the classic Benjamin Netanyahu line of, I will try to do his voice. He goes, saying gays for Gaza is like saying chickens for KFC, which I always thought was probably one of his best lines, to be completely honest. And it's a bunch of just propaganda. It's pretty gross, and that's essentially the thrust of the interview. One of the most bizarre part of the interview is where the interviewers engage in a conversation with Bibi about which one was superior, McDonald's or Burger King. They're talking about, we like McDonald's, and then Bibi goes, actually, I prefer the Whopper. So he was obviously a Burger King fan. So, look, the irony of having two frat boys who have never worked a day in their lives, one of them whose father was like, a high-level Zionist-linked lawyer who has defended Israeli nuclear arms smugglers, representing the most privileged portions of US society, having a friendly conversation about food with a man whose policies are actively resulting in the starvation of arguably 2 million people, the irony is not lost on me, and it is absolutely disgusting.
Yeah.
While this is going on, the security situation in Gaza is deteriorating. Aid groups warn that the population is on the brink of mass starvation. I believe the numbers are, as of this morning, 85% of Palestinians have reached the level of malnutrition where even if they did start receiving food and aid, the food and aid that is being blocked from them, their bodies and their brains would be permanently damaged.
They've been inflicted by permanent damage.
Permanent damage from malnutrition. So just day before yesterday, more than 20 Palestinians alone died of malnutrition. I've heard reports of doctors in hospitals speaking out saying that they are starving.
Yes.
The doctors are just passing out because they do not have the food to keep going on, to keep operating. The body count is rising every day. So the daily death toll, it appears to me to be between, 30 to 100 people every day just being killed at food distribution points.
Yeah. Gunned down,
drones, quadcopters firing into them, workers for the Gaza Humanitarian Foundation, who are essentially US mercenaries, throwing grenades into crowds of starving people.
Yeah.
Important to note that the Gaza Humanitarian Foundation is set up as an alternative to the UN.
Yes.
As the UN have no longer been allowed into the Gaza Strip to distribute aid.
And when they sent the aid workers in, they were also gunned down.
They were also killed. I believe over 200 UN workers have been killed by Israel so far. They've been labelled as an anti-Semitic organisation. The irony being that it was, I guess, a UN a UN resolution that actually granted, voted Israel into existence into 1948. Again, more irony. Not only are the people getting slaughtered lining up for food, there's been reports that the food is just completely lackluster. So you're getting someone will open up a sack of flour, it'd be full of worms, for example.
It's been sitting there for so long.
Sitting there for so long. There were reports of drugs crushed up, like amphetamines crushed up into the flour and powdered in. Lots of the food is spoiled. Across the border to Egypt, there's 3 months worth of food in the UN, warehouses ready to go, ready to be shipped in. However, that is not going to get to be allowed in because that defeats the purpose of ethnic cleansing, Geordie. Yeah. So it is just absolutely horrible. We're all watching this happen. Yeah. We've seen people like Anthony Albanese's statement, which you covered, where he said we condemn all the violence, we condemn Israel's breaking international law.
The weaponisation of humanitarian aid.
We've seen numerous countries come out. We saw Macron come out and essentially say, we recognise the state of Palestine. I find it really funny that they are all choosing now to recognise the state of Palestine when there is absolutely no hope of a Palestinian state left.
And even if they do, it's not going to change the conditions on the ground.
For Palestinians, so it's just the classic, just face saving, that way I can look back and tell my kids in 30 years' time, I was for a Palestinian state.
Token liberalism.
Token liberalism, that's what liberalism is. Even though that unprecedented but completely expected move, the Israeli Knesset has approved the measure calling for the official annexation of the occupied West Bank.
Which is met by silence in legacy media here in the West.
Yeah, no one said anything. The lawmakers in the Knesset voted 71-13 in favour.
Just think about that, James. The so-called liberal democracy of the Middle East has just passed a bill in Parliament to annex territories.
Yeah, it's amazing. The same only liberal democracy has bombed every single country around them in the last 2 years. They also refuse to give equal rights to people that are not Jewish Israelis. It's just insane.
It was that bill the other day that really did it for me.
Really drove it home, because obviously it's in full support. And there are some voices against it. Props to the Israelis is that the most powerful critics of the Israeli state are mainly in Israel.
But it's such a minority.
Such a minority, and they're so outnumbered. Yeah. So that vote calls for, which is in favour, and calls for applying Israeli sovereignty to Judea, Samaria, and the Jordan Valley, which are the term that they use for the West Bank. It's not getting any better. The whole situation's just getting worse. Yeah. And the worst part is that everyone's aware of it. Everyone knows what's happening. in the mainstream media, in Australia especially, they kind of obfuscate, they just follow the Bibi line of Hamas is not letting in aid.
Yeah.
It's just so painfully untrue
Yeah,
that you can't even justify it with a response, you know?
Yeah, and it's gotten worse and worse. Like, I watched all of the SBS World News highlights, to give you a bit of a good overview of what's going on globally each day. However, just for the past 2 weeks, I have found it impossible. I just cannot stomach the images coming out of Gaza at the moment.
Yeah.
Seeing children just looking like skeletons. So malnourished they can't move. It is very upsetting and moving. However, people do need to keep talking about it.
Yes.
We will keep covering it. However, if Gillian Siegel, the anti-Semitism czar here in Australia, has her way, if the Israel lobby here in Australia has its way, they will suppress any form of dissent and criticism of Israel, even from very small content creators like you and I, James.
Yes, and that is why we just keep the pressure on.
Yeah.
Keep talking about it. We might get sanctioned like Marine Faruqi, you know, or Francesca Albanese.
I will take that as an honour. Wear it as a badge.
Where it is a badge of honour. Because at the end of the day, if you don't stand up for what you're believing, then you stand for nothing, and there's no point. What do you live for?
Yeah, and also this is the crime of all crimes. Ethnic cleansing and genocide and starvation on this level is the crime of all crimes.
And the best part about it is we cover for the Israelis and the Western media so hard.
Yeah.
In Israel, in Israeli media, where they're speaking Hebrew, they don't cover for it. They actively talk about on their talk shows, their interview shows in the parliament. They just say what they want to do. It's only in English that they have to put on this kind of facade for us.
Right.
And look, it's just absolutely shocking.
However, I think we're at a turning point, and that was demonstrated by the Net Boys interview with Bibi. That after doing that PR stunt, that propaganda stunt, to try and create more support for Israel and for what's going on at the moment, it has completely backfired.
Yeah. And it is,
so backfired.
Further entrenching opposition to Israel.
Correct, that's right.
Look, again, we'll keep covering the content.
Yep.
I think going into the future, we'll keep talking about it, keep trying to spread the awareness, and keep trying to bring our audience, you guys, a bit of information that you might not be.
And if you enjoy what we're doing,
today.
please like, subscribe, and share. We really appreciate it. We will see you next week. Thank you.
We need more supporters for our glorious revolutionary army. Is that like